Hi, I'm Jane, and today I'm starting a new series of videos called A Taste Of, in which I give you a taste of some of my favourite books. So, if you happened to look at my channel's description page, you would find out that one of my favourite authors is Neal Stephenson. His most recent books are all long, which is actually not a problem for me because I love Neal Stephenson. But his earlier books are much more modest size. So for somebody who hasn't read any, it's probably not a bad idea to have a look at some of his earlier books. This is his first published work. Where am I? Here. And today I'm going to give you a taste of this one. I'm just going to read a little bit off the blurb to start with. Environmentalist and professional pain in the ass, Sangamon Taylor is Boston's latter-day Paul Revere, spreading the word from a 40-horsepower Zodiac raft. Embarrassing powerful corporations in highly telegenic ways is the perfect method of making enemies, and Taylor has a collection that would do any rabble-rouser proud. After his latest exploit, he's wanted by the FBI, possibly by the mafia, and definitely by a group of Satanist dustheads who think he's looking for a PCP factory, not a PCB contamination. Pretty soon, dodging bullets is the least of Taylor's problems because somewhere out there are an unhinged genetic engineer and a lab-concocted bacterium that could destroy all ocean life. And that's just for starters. Okay, so I'm going to read you just a little bit to give you a taste of Zodiac. When I got back, bacon was smouldering on the range, filling the house with gas-phase polycyclic aromatics, my favourite carcinogen by a long shot. Bartholomew was standing in front of the stove. With the level, cross-eyed stare of the involuntarily awake, he was watching a heavy metal video on the TV. He was clenching an inflated hefty bag that took up half the kitchen. Once again, my roommate was using nitrous oxide around an open flame. No wonder he didn't have any eyebrows. When I came in, he raised the bag invitingly. Normally, I never do nitrous before breakfast, but I couldn't refuse Bart a thing in the world, so I took the bag and inhaled as deep as I could. My mouth tasted sweet, and 5 seconds later, about half of an orgasm backfired in the middle of my brain. On the screen, poodle-headed rockers were strapping a cheerleader to a sheet of particle board decorated with a pentagram. Far away, Bartholomew was saying, "Poison, boysen, man, very hot." It was too early for social criticism. I grabbed the channel selector. "No stooges at this hour," Bart warned. I checked, but I'd already moved us away, up into deep cave, where a pair of chaw-munching geezers were floating on a non-toxic river in Dixie, demonstrating how to push out a comatose fish. Tess emerged from the part of the house where women lived and bathrooms were clean. She frowned against the light, scowling at our bubbling animal flesh, our cubic yard of nitrous. She rummaged in the fridge for some homemade yogurt. "Don't you guys ever lay off that stuff?" "Meat or gas? You tell me. Which one's more toxic?" "Sangamon's principle," I said. "The simpler the molecule, the better the drug. So the best drug is oxygen, only 2 atoms. The second best, nitrous oxide, a mere 3 atoms. The third best, ethanol, 9. Past that, you're talking lots of atoms." "So?" "Atoms are like people. Get lots of them together, never know what they'll do." "It's my understanding, Tess, that you've been referring to me as a granola James Bond." Tess didn't give a damn. "Who told you about that?" "You come up with a cute phrase, it gets around. I thought you'd enjoy it. Even a horse's ass like me can detect sarcasm." "So what would you rather be called?" "Toxic Spider-Man." Because, he's broke and he never gets laid. Tess squinted at me, implying that there was a reason for both problems. Bart broke the silence. "Shit, man, Spider-Man's got his health. James Bond's probably got AIDS. Peter Parker is the guy who got bit by the radioactive spider, the toxic bug, if you will, and became Spider-Man. Normally, he's a nebbish. No money, no prestige, no future. But if you try to mug him in a dark alley, you'll meet. The question he keeps asking himself is, do these moments of satisfaction I get as Spider-Man make up for all the crap I have to take as Peter Parker? And in my case, the answer is yes. In the dark ages of my life, when I worked at Massachusetts Analytical Chemical System, or MASA for short, I owned your basic VW van. But a Peter Parker type can't afford car insurance in this town, so now I transport myself on a bicycle. So once I'd fueled myself up on coffee and Bart's Bako cinders, nothing beats an all-black breakfast, and I read all the comics, I threw one leg over my battle-scarred all-terrain stump jumper and rode several miles to work. Hurricane Allison had blown through the day before yesterday, trailed by hellacious rainfall. Tree branches and lakes of rainwater were all over the streets. We call it rainwater, but actually it's raw sewage. The traffic signal at Com Ave and Charlesgate West was fried. In Boston, this doesn't lead to heartwarming stories in the tabloids about ordinary citizens who get out of their cars to direct traffic. Instead, it gives us the excuse to drive like the Chadian army. Here we had 2 lanes of traffic crossing with 4, and the 2 were losing out in a big way. Com Ave was backed up all the way into BU, so I rode between the lanes for half a mile to the head of the class. The problem is, if the 2 drivers at the front of the line aren't sufficiently aggressive, it doesn't matter how tough the people behind them are. The whole avenue will just sit there until it collectively boils over. And horn honking wasn't helping, though 100 or so motorists were giving it a try. When I got to Charlesgate West, where Com Ave was cut off by the torrent pouring down the one-way 4-laner, I found an underpowered station wagon from Maine at the head of one lane, driven by a mum who was trying to look after 4 children, and a vintage Mercedes in the other, driven by an old lady who looked like she'd just forgotten her own address. And half a dozen cyclists standing there waiting for a real arsehole to take charge. What you have to do is to take one lane at a time. I waited for a 20-foot gap in traffic on the first lane of Charlesgate, and then I just eased out into it. The approaching BMW made an abortive swerve towards the next lane, causing a ripple to spread across Charlesgate as everyone for 10 cars back tried to head east. Then he throbbed to a halt, computerised anti-lock braking system, and slumped over on the horn button. The next lane was easy. Some Camaro driving freshman from Jersey made the mistake of slowing down, and I seized his lane. The arsehole in the BMW tried to cut behind me, but half the cyclists and the biddy in the Benz had the presence of mind to lurch out and block his path. Within 10 seconds, a huge gap showed up in the third lane, and I ate it up before Camaro could swerve over. I ate it up so aggressively that some Clark typist too, in a Civic, slowed down in the fourth lane long enough for me to grab that one, and then the dam broke as the Chadian army mounted a charge and reamed out the intersection. I figured BMW, Camaro and Civic could shut their engines off and go for a walk. Pedestrians and winos applauded. A young 6-digit lawyer, hardly old enough to shave, cruised up from 10 cars back and shouted out his electronic sunroof that I really had balls. And I said, "Tell me something I don't know, you effing android from hell." The Mass Ave bridge took me over the Charles. I stopped halfway across to look it over. The river, that is. The river and the harbour, they're my stock in trade. Not much wind today, and I took a big whiff of river air in my nostrils, wondering what kind of crap had been dumped into it upstream the night before. Which might sound kind of primitive, but the human nose happens to be an exquisitely sensitive analytical device. There are certain compounds for which your schnoz is the best detector ever made. No machine can beat it. For example, I can tell a lot about a car by smelling its exhaust, how well the engine's tuned, whether it's got a catalytic converter, what kind of gas it burns. So, every so often I smell the Charles just to see if I'm missing anything. For a river that's only 30 miles long, it has the width and toxic burdens of the Ohio or the Cuyahoga. Then through the MIT campus, through the milling geeks with the $50 textbooks under their arms. College students look so damn young these days. Not long ago I was going to school on the other side of the river thinking of these trolls as peers and rivals. Now I just feel sorry for them. They probably feel sorry for me. By visual standards, I'm the scum of the earth. The other week, I was at a party full of Boston yuppies, the originals, and they were all complaining about the panhandlers on the common, how aggressive they'd become. I hadn't noticed myself, since they never panhandled me, and then I figured out why. Because I looked like one of them. Blue jeans with holes in the knees, tennis shoes with holes over the big toes with my uncut toenails rub against the toe clip of my bicycle, several layers of t-shirts, long underwear tops and flannel shirts, easily adjustable to regulate my core temperature, shaggy blonde hair, cut maybe once a year, formless red beard, trimmed or lopped off maybe twice a year. Not exactly fat, but blessed with the mature convex body type typical of those who live on Thunderbirds and ding-dongs. No briefcase, aimless way of looking around, tendency to sniff the river. Though I rode through MIT on a nice bike, I sprayed it with some cheap gold paint so it wouldn't look nice. Even the lock looked like a piece of shit, a kryptonite lock all scarred up by bolt cutters. We used it to padlock a gate at a toxic site last year, and the owners had tried to get through it using the wrong tools. In California, I could have passed for a hacker heading for some high-tech company, but in Massachusetts, even the hackers wore shirts with buttons. I pedalled through hacker territory, through the strip of little high-tech shops that feed off MIT and into the square where my outfit had its regional office. GEE, the group of environmental extremists. GEE International. They employ me as a professional arsehole, an innate talent I've enjoyed ever since second grade when I learned how to give my teacher migraine headaches with a pen light. I could cite other examples, give you a tour down the gallery of the broken and infuriated authority figures who have tried to teach, steer, counsel, reform, or suppress me over the years. But that would sound like boasting. I'm not that proud of being a congenital pain in the ass, but I will take money for it. Okay, that was a taste of Zodiac by Neal Stephenson. And if you like what you heard, you might want to pick it up. Talk to you later. Bye.